Hundreds of tables, each having hundreds of views and dozens of automations connecting everything. That is a pretty typical Airtable base and a pretty messy Airtable base usually. And any Airtable base can turn into a messy base if it's not managed properly. If I've learned anything from setting up thousands of bases in Airtable for dozens of clients over the years, it is this. Separate your concerns and don't put all your data into one single base. Let's look at a practical example in today's video and let's see how we can do this in a better way. Let's get into it. So welcome to today's video and welcome to our messy base. I call this the God base, the all-knowing base. Why did I call this the God base? Because I had to think of God objects. And God objects is this idea in programming where an object that is, or the God object is an object that references a large number of distinct types, has too many unrelated or uncategorized methods, or some combination of both. And I kind of had to think of this like when I see some of these Airtable bases that have just grown over time, and basically we were just adding tables to it, table after table after table, and we ended up with dozens or hundreds of tables that are sort of doing separate things. Some are related, some are not related, and basically we end up with something like here. I don't have records here, so excuse me that sort of I'm not showing you like a super realistic example, but let's look at these tables. Basically, it started with client data. Like we wanted to store some client data, and then we also added some companies to it, and then we added some projects to it because we do some project management with it. But then we had expenses, let's say, that we wanted to track, and we had an employee directory, so we wanted to store our employees here, but then we also wanted to do scheduling for those employees. And wouldn't it be nice to store the salary brackets for employees somewhere? So we added that to our all-knowing base as well. And then at some point, it was good to sort of add some prices and packages because that is important for projects. You kind of want to store prices and packages there in order to reference them when you're writing quotes for project. You get the idea. We're just adding table after table after table to this one big base. And on top of that, we might have automations that we're creating because we are manipulating data, we're creating new data, we're sending something out, we're sending emails, we're doing certain things, we're automating stuff, and it becomes very, very messy. It becomes very, very hard to manage. It's hard to share this base with people. It's very easy to make mistakes in this. It's basically not a good approach to go about Airtable, but everyone's been there. I've been there many, many times. I've seen many setups like this. And over the years, I've sort of come up with a better method and a better way of starting almost any of my Airtable projects. So when a client approaches me, or if I start something for my own use, I basically always start with a different approach. And let's look at it by going into Miro. And in Miro, I have, first of all, here what we just looked at, sort of our all-knowing base, this circle here representing the all-knowing base, and then all of these tables in here, and we just keep adding to that base. And here on the right, I show you the alternative, the way I'm doing this now in all of my projects. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm creating a web of bases. So every circle here is a base. And basically, every use case gets its own base. So that is the big change. Before, we had one base with lots of tables and lots of views, lots of automations in one single base. Now I'm creating a web of bases, and I'm basically syncing generously between those bases. And I'm making sure that for every use case, every team, whatever fits in a way, but mostly use cases, I'm creating its own base, which makes things a lot more manageable. So as you can see, I have this web here of, like, let's say in our case, we had a CRM and we had like a scheduling base and then a project management base. And there could be like many, many more use cases, of course, added to this. And then at the core of this, I have core data. And what core data is data that is referenced by almost any of those use cases. So in our case, this would be client data, right? Or companies. Like that is stuff that sort of we're referencing at multiple points, and it makes sense to organize that data in a central place and call it core data, so anyone knows that kind of data lives in core data. And you would have to define what lives there exactly, what is defined as core data and what's not defined as core data, but usually it's stuff that sort of is referenced by many use cases like clients and companies and projects and this kind of stuff. And then when you're working with that data, that is actually happening in the use case basis. So if you are, I don't know, for instance, handling some expenses that might be in a employee directory base or some other base that sort of is handling that, or of course your projects and any related stuff to projects is then basically handled in your project management base. Maybe scheduling would be in project management, but you get the idea. You're basically clustering things in a particular way according to use cases. And this has really changed things a lot and made things a lot more manageable. But let's look at all the benefits that sort of this approach brings here on the right. First benefit we already talked about is separation of concerns. So suddenly it becomes much more manageable and intuitive where people have to go to find what. So in our case here, the CRM is like anything that is sort of CRM related is clear, it's in the CRM base. Anything that is project management related will be in the project management base. So everything's very separated according to its concern. Permissions get a lot easier. So it's much easier to set permissions. It's much easier to basically give certain employees or certain members of your team, of your organization, only access to whatever they need to have access to, because basically they're only in that particular team and they don't care about anything else. Third one, a core base reduces the chance for duplicates, because what happens often is people realize that this is an issue. The all-knowing God base is an issue, so they create like a separate base somewhere, and then suddenly in there they have they have client data as well, and start sort of creating client data there, and suddenly you have client data in your all-knowing base, you have client data in a separate base, maybe in a third base, and you're creating data silos. And basically breaking up data silos was the reason we were using Airtable in the first place. And the fourth one, very important, it increases productivity and reduces the chance of errors as employees only see what's relevant for them. An issue that I see in many projects that I've done over the years is that it becomes basically too much. And of course, at this point, we have interfaces and we do a lot with interfaces. Absolutely clear that is sort of a way to reduce errors as well. But it makes sense to start at the data layer, right? So here we're talking about the foundation of things, and it makes sense to already there make sure that only what's really necessary is visible to people. And that makes it way more manageable. So these four core benefits come from setting things up in this like separated way, basically where you create bases for use cases, and at the core you have your core database that is sort of syncing out things, and between these bases you of course also syncing where necessary. Yeah, and that's it for today's video. I hope it helps you, it brings value, it helps you organize your Airtable setups and projects. And if you're interested in more content like this in automating with no code and AI, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Let me know in the comments below if you like this video or if you have any suggestions of what should be done better, what should improve. Maybe you have different takes on things. Very curious to hear your thoughts. And until then, I wish you happy automating and speak to you very soon.